Sorry about that I missed that meeting. Oh, well,
They did all right.
we'll start over.
All right, we're live.
Okay. Today is March 1st, Wednesday, 2023. Public Utility Commission meeting. Call the meeting to order. Take the roll call. Charles is here, Bill is here, myself, and we have the city representation is also here today. Let's see. Did you guys get a chance to, any questions in the 3 items in the consent agenda as far as approving last meeting's agenda in the minutes and also the payment report? Anything in the payment report anybody wants to question or take out?
Just one little question about the payment report. There's an item where we pay the health department. Why are we paying the health
Is that the
department?
Minnesota?
You want to come up to the mic, Neil?
Like-
Find the info first.
Hang on, I'll find it for you.
Which health department?
Minnesota.
Minnesota
Okay.
Health? Then it's probably some, I don't know. I'll let him answer because I'm not gonna.
It's on the last page of the details, and it's about slightly below middle of the page.
Oh, I see.
And it's just a matter of curiosity. It's just like, why do we owe the health Department of Health? Or why do we pay them?
Boy, that one's not coming to the top of my head is what it was. It's a lot of money too.
It's probably our one-time fee every year for.
Is that a fee or is that testing? Is that lab work or is that?
That's probably a fee.
Like a license fee kind of?
Yeah, we pay the Department of Health for.
Yeah, I know we pay the Department of Natural Resources for every drop of water we take out of the lake too.
Okay, well, it's
That's-
not a big deal, just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can follow that up. We can research that and make sure you get your question answered for sure on that. Okay, so, other than that, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Also move.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Bill and seconded by Charles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. First item on the agenda is the electrical department is looking at replacing a 2005 3/4 ton pickup with a new pickup. And in our packet, we have a bid from, apparently, I think it's probably one that's available that we can get our hands on. Is this more of like a work truck type? Basically a stripped down work truck, which is
Well, not
hard
exactly.
to find unless you order
Yeah.
it.
This one, and to order it doesn't necessarily guarantee its availability either, because there's a bit of a shortage.
Right.
So this one doesn't. It's in an order queue, and we're able to get our name on it if we act quickly.
Yeah, there's actually, looks
So-
like three vendors were contacted.
3 vendors and 2 can't deliver,
2 can't?
or 1 can't. One vendor, Sanju and Northland Chevrolet out of Superior, Wisconsin. They're the ones that have a 2023 Silverado that's currently in production that does fit our specs, and that's kind of what we're looking at, that vehicle. So if you go through we did get a breakdown of the cost and the specs on this vehicle.
I have a
Actually,
question.
it's a 2024. I think I said 2023. Yeah.
I have a question. What's state bid pricing?
Pardon?
What is state
Yeah.
bid
What is
pricing?
state price? Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Is this state pricing?
It
that-
is.
That we're looking at? Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean, though?
It's a discount, I think,
So the state
public.
procures contracts for lots and lots and lots and lots of different product that you can join a membership with other agencies to, instead of doing the bidding yourself, you can just rely on the prices that are offered through the state's bid.
Okay. Thank you.
Seems like we'd be exempt from sales tax, yes?
Not necessarily,
Really?
not for electric, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, that's a question I had too, is sales tax.
I got excited when I saw the agenda item because before I read it carefully, I saw electric department truck.
Yes, electric department truck.
So was any thought given to getting an electric truck? Or is that just not ready, available at this point?
They're even harder to get. than-
Not in a
Yes.
2500, I don't think.
Yeah.
It'd probably be a 1500.
I looked at the wait list for just an electric truck a while ago. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
So,
Next
you wanna
time.
drive your truck anytime soon.
Be a perfect application for an electric truck, but, because
Yeah.
I assume it never really goes anywhere. It stays in the city, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, a couple
Yeah.
miles outside of the city.
Yeah. be
It's got,
perfect.
I mean, it's not about that, right? It has towing responsibilities, and it has to run ancillary equipment sometimes.
Mm.
But, yeah, it's the sort of thing that I think, as a new technology, it'll be able to handle rather soon.
Yeah,
Well, it's not our only truck. We'll get another crack at this.
okay.
I'm curious, how many miles was the old one? How many miles on it? A lot, I'm guessing, but.
I don't
just-
think so, no.
Oh, really?
So this is a vehicle then, I'm assuming that's part of the equipment amortization schedule when you are bringing in equipment, getting new equipment, replacing equipment.
Right, so we have a planned replacement schedule for
Sure.
our equipment. And this is the example of where we don't follow the plan, because we would have replaced this a long time ago if we just kept it for 12 or 15 years like we were planning on a pickup truck to last. Instead, it's in decent condition, it doesn't have high miles, but it's starting to get to the point where it's time for it to be replaced.
Yep.
So we'll keep it as long as we can, and sometimes we have to replace them earlier than we had intended. The current bucket truck that we have replaced one that we'd only had for about 5 years and had a lot of issues with, and decided to trade it in and get it replaced. So this is the other side of that, which is more typical for us, which is we get to keep it a little bit longer than
Mhm.
we think we might.
What happens to the old one?
We'll sell it.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that. You either sell it or any other department need it, or would you just prefer selling it?
Yeah, we'll just sell it.
Okay.
I move approval as outlined in the staff memo.
Second?
So you make a motion to approve, and then we haven't put a deposit down on this yet, so that's what we have to do to hold it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you approve the purchase, we'll send them $1,000.
To hold it, okay.
Keep our name on it.
So we have a motion to approve the purchase of this new pickup to replace the 2004. Do we have a second?
Yeah, he seconded.
Or any questions, any other discussion?
I mean, I assume somebody's gone through this and made sure it has all the features that we're looking for, so.
Yeah.
We've been shopping for a while.
Yep.
Yeah. I think half-ton pickups are easier to find 3/4 ton pickups, especially this has an 8-foot box.
I don't think it's quite 8 foot.
I thought it said 8 foot.
That's what we were looking for.
Says 8 foot, second line down.
Yeah, 4x4 crew cab with 8-foot box. So that's not something you see on a lot anywhere. You rarely see them. Well, that's a base model, but that's, are they just giving you the base specs, or is that actually have I'm trying to see.
This one's been ordered and is in production.
Yeah,
So,
maybe it does have it. Maybe it is 8 foot, because I don't see any other
Yeah.
specs that say that it's a 6.5 or a 6-foot box. Okay, so I'm assuming it has an 8-foot box. So we have a motion to approve the purchase, the replacement. I guess I'll second it. And all in favor?
Charles already seconded it.
Pardon?
Charles
Oh,
seconded it.
you already seconded it? I'm
Yep.
sorry. Charles.
No worries.
Charles seconded it. That's fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And we can go ahead with the replacement of the '05 pickup with the new one. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the wastewater treatment facility renewal plan. And I'm assuming we have
Guests.
This is quite an extensive
Yes.
report.
Yeah, another small purchase.
Yeah.
So we'll have a presentation by
A2S.
Two guests.
AE2S? AE2S, okay. Environmental Services. Advanced Engineering, okay. So welcome to our meeting, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So over the last month is really when this report got pulled together. And there were some elements from some previous work that we were able to lean on, but I got Mike Saunders along with today, who really led most of the work. I was also in there working with Mike on it, but Mike really did the heavy lifting. And so Mike's got some slides together that he'll go through and basically give the verbal version of what's in the report. I think there might be a few items that after that draft report got sent, we picked up a few other things that had some typos and edits and got a few numbers changed, but overall I think it's probably 99% the same as what the draft is. So have a little presentation, a little discussion, and figure out what we're gonna submit as a draft to the state to try to get in line for funding. So Mike, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. All right, I'll share my screen here, and Patrick, if you just want to confirm that you can second here, not share.
All right, we're seeing it now.
Okay, so you can see the first slide still?
Wastewater treatment facility renewal plan.
Okay. Okay, yeah, like Scott said, my name's Mike Saunders. I'm a project engineer at AE2S, so I kind of specialize in wastewater mainly. So we're calling this the wastewater treatment facility renewal plan. So yeah, like Scott said, this is really just going over the kind of the key highlights of the report. I would say there's much more detail in the report, but for the sake of just giving you guys the highlights, I think it was was better off to go through a PowerPoint presentation and to go through the highlights. So go through a brief introduction, why we're doing this. Go through loading projections that we're calculating for the plant, facility condition, recommended improvements, estimated project cost, and then project funding options, and then kind of next steps. So, but first we wanted to just highlight what the answer is. At least, I would preface this cost with, we think 8.95 million for, the full renewal of the facility. I would say there is some items here and there that, we could prioritize to potentially reduce some costs, but I think as a first step, especially for submitting this to the MPCA, we would recommend going with this full rehabilitation cost. There's nothing saying that we can't make some modifications here and there between now and the final draft in June. So this is really just the first initial draft of the MPCA. So I'll give some more context to this cost as we go on through this PowerPoint slide. So just an introduction. So we were hired through Grand Marais to complete this facility. We're calling it a facility renewal plan. The MPCA would call it a facility plan. So we need a licensed engineer to kind of put a plan together, especially if there's going to be a request for state or federal funding. So basically what we're doing is we're summarizing the facility's condition and then recommending improvements for next 20 years. That's kind of a typical life cycle cost for a facility plan. So the next step here would be actually just in 2 days submitting this draft to the MPCA. And like I said, this isn't like pigeonholing the city into going through with this project or this amount of money. It's just kind of just starting the process with the MPCA to at least get in line for funding for potentially a project in 2024. So facility description, I figured I should just talk about what you guys currently have now, just a brief history. So the facility was originally constructed in 1972. There was a major upgrade completed in 1988. And then disinfection, so to remove pathogens, that was that system was included in 1999 project. So obviously it discharges to Lake Superior. I have just a quick process flow diagram is what we would call this, just to go over just the general treatment or the general concept of the plant. I'll just slowly kind of walk through this. So raw wastewater comes in, there's a bar screen and a comminutor in parallel. So the comminutor kind of grinds up inert solids that wouldn't be able to make it through the plant without being ground up. This is a pretty old technology, but I'll get into that later. Goes into vortex grit removal, so removing sand and like heavy particles. Got to really want to settle that out to protect the downstream processes. Downstream of the unit processes, so we don't want that grit going through the pumps or settling out in the oxidation ditch or the clarifiers even. So after that, it's where you get into more of the interesting process. So it's the biological treatment. So maintaining basically a biomass to treat BOD, biological oxygen demand, in this oxidation ditch here. Then we're recycling the biomass to control a sludge age to make sure you're getting that treatment. So there's 2 aerators, surface aerators in this oxidation ditch. Everything is original to that 1988 upgrade, so they're getting pretty old and somewhat antiquated technology. There's a lot more efficient aeration and control systems out there to reduce energy costs. Goes through final clarification, so settles out all the solids, the clean water comes off the final clarifiers, and into this blue line, goes through UV disinfection for the pathogen reduction, removal, and then goes to discharges into Lake Superior. So that's a very, I would say, very simple version of what you have there. There's definitely a lot more other processes and equipment I'm not showing here, but just to give you just a brief summary of what you have. So, some numbers, a little bit of words on this page, but as part of the facility planning process, we need to look at kind of what the facility is currently rated for as far as flow and organic loading. The MPCA is going to want us to look at this to make sure that, for the next 20 years, you're not going to need more capacity to meet your limits. So we went through this exercise. So just a couple of comments here. So 20-year planning horizon. We included a population growth of 1%. We looked back at past historical census data, and I would say mainly there isn't a lot of population. It's pretty stagnant population growth. So, but for the purposes of planning, best case scenario, we want to consider 1%. So continue adding 1% population. There's going to be more load, more flow with that. And to do that, we utilize the last 5 years of data, of DMR data from the MPCA provided that. So this is the current capacity, so hydraulic capacity of 2.5 MGD. And then the organic loading is 884 pounds of BOD per day. So that's the current capacity. This was one of the typos Scott was talking about in the report. It's a much larger number shown here, but this is actually the true value. So we'll get that modified in the report. So what we're coming up with for an organic loading is 825 pounds BOD per day. So that's 20 years from now, we're estimating that amount. So this is basically saying that your current facility can meet that organic loading for that 20-year projected life. So it's currently capable of meeting that. On the hydraulic capacity side, we will need, we are just a bit over the hydraulic capacity technically, but we're considering some items to add into the facility in order to kind of, just to kind of appease the MPCA a bit, and there is more technology out there that can improve the hydraulic capacity of the facility without constructing a whole new clarifier or a whole new oxidation ditch. So this is close enough where we think we don't have to add significant infrastructure.
Mike, just quick question. You said you're anticipating 1% population increase. Is that 1% per year?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I looked at the historic, the census data, and it was right around 0. It's negative at times, above 1. So it's a pretty conservative, I would say, estimate for to have 1% population growth year over year. But for the purposes of planning, like where we're at now, the MPCA is going to want to see something like that to show that we're covered.
Yep.
So conclusions from this page, basically saying the existing design basis of the plant is sufficient for the projected organic loading. And then on the hydraulic side, we'll consider some things on the clarifiers, and we'll look at some items to improve the hydraulic capacity. But there's not a major concern of being 0.07 MGD over the hydraulic capacity. So getting into the condition of the facility, I have a few pictures on the next slide here, but just wanted to, there's more detail in the report, just to kind of touch on kind of the highlights. So preliminary treatment condition, that those first, the preliminary treatment equipment is located in the service building. So that common uter I was just talking about is a fairly antiquated technology. There's much more efficient automated technologies that will save O&M costs, through the next 20 years at least. And yeah, inefficient, antiquated, labor intensive, I would say. And Neil can probably attest to that there. There's also some corroded piping and valves in that building, likely to do with the H2S corrosion. Secondary treatment condition, those aerators that are aerating that oxidation ditch, those over time you can actually lose, they're like the steel paddles that are essentially lifting water and putting it into the air for you're transferring oxygen into the water. So those over time will kind of wear out. They can break off, and also the motors are inefficient. And I think the biggest part of this ditch, or this oxidation ditch, is the control system. So right now it's on-off control. There's been a lot of advances in control technology to control the dissolved oxygen in that tank, and you can significantly reduce energy consumption. So that's one big item. The final clarifiers, the mechanisms, I think one was put in 77, the next in 76 and 88. Those are likely due to be replaced due to corrosion and basically the internal metal mechanical portion, the rakes that turn clockwise to collect the solids on the bottom. All that equipment, we would recommend to replace. Just visually looking at, there's corrosion on the mechanisms, and there's a potential to actually remove that and sandblast and recoat, but we found that at least for now it's best to just consider full replacement, because costs of rehabbing can surprisingly be pretty expensive as well. Disinfection. So the UV system put in 99 is that UV technology has come a long way with efficiency and not needing to replace as many bulbs. Solids handling, there's a lack of biosolids aeration control, and then I think this could be leading to some of the issues with the odor problems, which is kind of the next item here. So this odor control is, the odors that currently observing is not the right word, but at the plant is likely to do with unstabilized biosolids, and that's likely starting in the oxidation ditch. So not getting consistent air in there, and then not enough control on the biosolid side to basically maintain aerobic conditions. That's likely the cause of the odor. But we also have in the next couple slides, we have a solution for that, for the odor control. So some other items, the structural condition of the facility, I think if you walk around and notice, there's a lot of cracking, there's some significant corrosion at the top of the oxidation ditch, likely to do from H2S. This really needs to be taken care of pretty soon. You don't want to let this go too long, or else it can get to a point where you have to even replace the entire tank. So for the purposes of this report, we're assuming it's you can rehab the current structure, but additional kind of evaluation of that on site is needed just to confirm that. But yeah, anyway, a lot of the concrete structures are showing signs of erosion, and so we have some costs in there for replacing that, or for rehabbing those structures. There's new membrane roof on the service building is needed. It sounds like there's some leaking there, and it's close to the point where you need to replace that membrane beneath that rock that's on that service building. Plant monitoring control system. I would say the current system there it's fairly outdated, not a lot of control with really anything. So the oxidation ditch, for any of your pumps. A lot of modern mechanical plants have PLC and SCADA systems, so like a central spot where you can control and monitor your entire plant. And I would say mostly all mechanical plants have that now. That's kind of a big recommendation for the facility for energy consumption. So you reduce your energy costs and then also your O&M costs. There's a lot of automation these days you can put into a lot of this equipment. And then some additional ancillary items. We don't have to go into too much detail about these, but preliminary effluent pumps are old and likely need replacement. The chemical feed system, plant water supply, sampling equipment, process piping and valves, and then the standby generator is close to typical life of the generator. So now we're getting into recommended improvements. So that was kind of what's wrong with the facility, what we think can be rehabilitated, what should be. Now we're getting into how do we address these issues. So preliminary treatment building is probably the largest item I would say on this report. So we would recommend an automatic fine screening and compaction unit. It's a lot of plants have these current comminutor that is in there. It's basically grinding up inert material and then it just flows through the plant. This is actually taking out all those screenings and the material, and it's going to help a lot with the maintenance and O&M on your oxidation ditch and a lot of your downstream pumps. And then it's also just much more efficient at making the comminutor. So there's two kind of options we listed in the report. One is an in-kind replacement, so just replace what you currently have, the comminutor and the grit removal system you have there. The next is actually to get this automatic fine screen. It's expanding the service building a bit. So there's some more added cost to this alternative too, but I would say it's highly recommended, especially looking at the next 20 years. To make sure you're going to get reliable treatment. So there's more detail in the report on that. So anyway, we're recommending alternative 2, reduce operations and maintenance, and then removes inert material that can damage downstream equipment.
When you remove that material, rather than what we're doing now, grinding it up, you got to dispose of it then, correct? Is there questions or issues with storage and disposal? How does that work? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think I missed the back half of the question.
In the, like right now we're grinding up all that material and it's going through the plant. When you screen it and take it out, what do you do with that material then? Does it have to be stored?
Yeah,
Does it have to be?
It goes into a dumpster and it's landfilled.
Okay, so that would be possibly quite a bit of material then. Are there any?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on plant to plant. So that automatic screen actually comes with an automatic compactor, so it compacts the material as well. Hard to say how much material that would be, but it's just going to be a standard size like dumpster. It's not going to be like a huge quantity every week, but
Okay.
Yeah, we're probably talking a 2 yard a week between the screens and the grit.
Okay.
Like what I think of as a normal dumpster. It's not one of the big roll-off dumpsters or anything, just like the normal alleyway dumpster.
Okay, I was just curious. I know they have a dumpster over there now that does get some of the stuff that they're cleaning out of probably some screens and so on and so forth.
Bar screen.
Yeah, so I just didn't know if this added a lot of extra material or not. So I'm glad that it sounds like not over bearing amount of stuff.
no.
Okay.
No, and whatever you take out via screenings, you're also not going to create biosolids with it. So it's maybe a marginal increase in what would go via the dumpster route, but we would also slightly decrease the biosolids production because of it, because the solids have to go somewhere.
Right.
So is it primarily inorganic material that you get out with these fine screens, or more organic?
Yeah, it's primarily inorganic material, but it'll take out air, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's primarily inorganic. I guess it's either going to settle out in the ditch likely, or get caught up in the clarifier in your pumps. I mean, it's definitely much better to take it out ahead of all of your downstream, more sensitive processes. So.
Okay. Saving wear and tear on everything downstream, then basically is what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's the main protecting the downstream equipment is the main reason to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen facilities that don't have much of any screenings at all, and even with these oxidation ditch type aeration equipment, and maybe you're not experienced much there, but that ragging can get caught on all if you have any instrumentation, or which you don't, but any of those brush rotors can get kind of clogged up on those brushes and decrease your efficiency, and then have issues with pumps, and just that stuff settling out in your ditch is going to reduce your treatment capacity. So there's a lot that benefits.
And even with the grinders, there's often potential for reweaving, where the smaller bits turn into larger bits as they work their way through the system. So just getting them out of the system is just less stuff that Neil and the crew need to mess around with.
Okay, thank you.
So this is secondary treatment. So secondary treatment is the oxidation ditch, the final clarifiers, and then the RAS, kind of lumping the RAS and WAS pumps in there as well. So obviously wastewater comes into the oxidation ditch. You get that biological treatment, goes into the clarifiers, solid settles out to the bottom, clear water goes out to the UV and then to the effluent. And then the solids that settle out, you're actually recycling most of that back to the oxidation ditch to keep the bacteria in the system for treatment. And then the WAS pump that's where you're wasting the solids that are being generated in the ditch to the biosolid storage tank. So oxidation ditch, we would highly recommend putting in new, more efficient aeration equipment in there with a bit higher capacity to better control the dissolved oxygen in there. So that should kind of indirectly help with odor control as well. With insufficient aeration can lead to H2S production, which is the leading cause of odors at a wastewater plant. So new aerators and then better process control as well. So you can install dissolved oxygen control sensors in here and actually just control the aeration speed of the aerator speed to control the specific dissolved oxygen you want in the tank. And that can lead to a lot of savings as well, energy savings. So final clarifiers, like I was saying before, a mechanism, and we included a cover replacement as well. I think there is, you could consider just refurbishing the existing covers. I think at this point it would be worthwhile just to keep that cost in there for now. We can maybe evaluate that or tweak that before the final report. Addition of a density current baffle. So I don't think I have an image of it here, it's in the report, but it's to help with solid settling in that clarifier. And it's a good justification to the MPCA. We're adding some things to help increase, kind of increase the hydraulic capacity of the plant since it's, slightly above what the facility is rated for, what we're projecting. And then replacing 2 of the RAS pumps. So there's 3 of them. There's 2 RAS and 1 WAS pump. I think 1 was recently replaced. We would recommend replacing the other 2 as part of this project as well. Disinfection, just new UV banks, more efficient UV banks, and then new control system. And then the solids handling, I would say, we're calling it solids handling, but it's really more of improving. It is improving the solids handling. But so 3 new aeration blowers. I think that's mainly based on the age of the current blowers that are at the facility. They likely need to be replaced soon. Valves and piping necessary to independently control the air to each storage tank. So that this should help controlling the odors a bit more to each of those tanks. So Neil can kind of modulate how much air is going to each of them. Right now, it's just kind of full bore to each tank. And then some valves and piping necessary to be able to waste directly from the clarifiers and then bypass the tanks altogether and just haul straight WAS. So that just added flexibility to help with the odor control. And then as far as just directly trying to directly treating the odors. There's gas phase odor control, and we had kind of worked on this prior to this report, but it's included in this report as well. So pulling the air, pulling the air in the headspace to the biosolids tanks, which we think most of the odor is coming from, and then running it through a granular activated carbon media, so one of these systems, to help physically reduce the odor. So I think there's a number of items in this report that will help indirectly reduce odors, but this kind of directly reduces odors, which I think is kind of a high priority from the city's perspective, I would say. Overall plant monitoring and control systems. So a number of these systems we're recommending, the vendors are going to provide control panels. So this option is replacing the remaining control panels with PLC-based control panels. So they actually have essentially a computer in the control panel to more efficiently and maybe more of on a programming logic control the plant. And then an overall, SCADA system, supervisory control and data acquisition. Never really understood the name of that, but I always understood SCADA. So it's essentially a computer station for Neil, where you can even remotely access it or access it from one location at the site that pulls in all the monitoring and control from the facility into one computer. So like I was saying, most mechanical plants, modern mechanical plants have this at their facility. Okay, so now moving on to more of a breakdown of the project costs. So you can kind of see a list here. This is included in the report as well. I mean, the biggest item is definitely the preliminary treatment building. Because we're having to basically expand that building a bit, which will take a lot of structural work, and then also we'll need to figure out bypassing as well during that. So we have some costs kind of in there for now. So yeah, the oxidation ditch upgrade, clarifier mechanism, cover replacement, new pumps for the WAS and RAS, disinfection, solids handling, odor control system, a number of those ancillary systems we went over, and structural rehab. And there's a few adders on this as well, like obviously, mobilization, demobilization, bonds, sales tax on the equipment material only. Your overall subtotal is at 5.9, but at this point, in kind of the planning phase, we typically have a 30% contingency. And then any of the engineering, admin, legal, another 20% onto that. So I would say as you go through, obviously you go through the design, the detailed design on a project, that 30% will reduce. Hopefully, your costs will reduce a little bit, but at the same time, you might be finding more detail in there that contingency was covering. So normally that kind of offsets itself. But so yeah, overall, this is the overall costs we're looking at for current improvements on the project. So keep going here. So funding considerations. So the whole reason we're submitting this report on the 3rd in 2 days is to kind of get in line in the MPCA's queue for potential project in 2024. It's not to say that has to happen, but it's good to get in line for it. Here are a number of funding options. So the Clean Water Revolving Fund, that's that low interest rate financing option. And then there's another of other grant opportunities and other financing options that are listed here, including federal congressional or spending earmarks, which that can also be pursue that as well. So we don't have a breakdown on how this will be funded at this point, but these are just showing kind of the options you can go after to fund the project. So kind of next steps, here's the schedule. So draft facility plan, what we're talking about right now, it's submitted this month, so 2 days, March 3rd. We also need to get on the MPCA's priority list, so a PPL list. So it's like essentially a scoring sheet that puts all the projects that everyone in the state is proposing and kind of puts them in a comparison, like what should be in the MPCA eyes, what's more important than the other. And I think just looking at the PPL list, looking over it now, I think we'll be in a decent shape as far as what the scoring will be. So we would also submit that to the MPCA. Also need to get on the intended use plan placement. That comes in June with the final facility plan in June as well. And then, assuming we go ahead with the project, the plans and specifications would be submitted for the MPCA's review in January 2024, and then construction 2024, 2025 is kind of what, assuming a project goes forward, this is kind of what we're looking at right now. And then just a note on this, that obviously we're presenting this now, but sometime between now and June, we'll need to solicit for public comments and a resolution on the recommendations of this report. I think we decided to not do it now, just kind of show this draft. And then at a future point when we have a final facility draft ready, or sometime between now and June, we would need a resolution and solicitation for public comment, and to include that in a submittal to the MPCA, if that's required from them as well. So just to note that.
What does the resolution contain? What's that about?
I was having trouble hearing it.
Sorry. What's the purpose of the resolution, or what does it do, or what's contained in it?
It's just it's basically, the MPCA wants these cities to make sure that the public, I guess, somewhat agrees with the path forward on the facility plan. So it's really just that's essentially it. Really, just to get a resolution from the public, and then also provide chance for the public to provide comments on it. obviously there doesn't need to be comments. It's just providing an opportunity for there to be public comments.
Yep.
It's just making sure we didn't submit the thing without you knowing about it is essentially what it is.
Oh,
It's just it's a step in the process.
so it's a resolution out of city council or PUC or some entity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we support this, we want to pursue this.
Yeah. Just approving the application.
So I have a question. I'm new to all this, so probably a naive question, but how do you do this and treat sewage at the same time?
So how do you do all this work and treat the sewage at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, what happens when you...
I guess the first thing would be planning.
1988, they did.
It does feel at times like changing the jet engine while it's in flight. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
Some of these things will be more challenging than others to pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, when you go through the design or the detailed design, you provide constraints to the contractor that obviously they need to kind of maintain the facility while you're going through construction. So, but yeah, we would provide a lot of guidance on that for the contractor to maintain the plant. But it is definitely, when you're rehabbing an existing facility, it can be challenging at times, but normally you can find a way to do it.
Okay.
I'm curious, is your idea that basically all this work would be done at once? It occurs to me that maybe it would make sense to kind of phase it or do it stepwise over a period of, I don't know, 5 years. Maybe that's ridiculous, but in that way, maybe you could, I don't know, you wouldn't be having to swallow such a huge cost burden all at once, perhaps.
Right. There is something to be said about that. I mean, I think, we definitely had to put this plan together fairly in quick order. So there is a phased approach. You could go that route. I would say if you are going to split up those costs and you are kind of hitting on a lot of like the mobilization costs, like multiple times.
Yeah.
I would say it is always, if you can stomach it, and I'm not saying that 8.9 is cheap by any means, but
right.
If you can stomach it, it is beneficial to kind of pack that all into one.
Yeah.
Even to get contractors interested in the project, coming in with a $9 million project versus $3 million, you can get some better, more competitive bids that way as well. So
There's really no functional difference for us financially between paying for this in 1 year or doing it over 5 to 10 years. I mean, we can't absorb $2 million in 5 years.
I see. You're gonna finance it over time anyway. kind
Over
of what you're
time,
saying.
yeah. So I mean, we'd be basically ramping up to paying the full capital cost of it over however many years we decided to take to do it.
Yeah.
So, and the strategy here is that there are programs that provide funding assistance, and we're going to seek that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we might as well
the
assume
whole
we're going to do it
project
all at
at
once.
once.
And then
Yeah.
if we find that we just can't afford to do it all, we'll have to be strategic about what we choose to do.
Yeah. Who pursues the funding? Whose job is that?
Well, we're going to have some help from our friends at AE2S, and so I'd say it'll be our joint responsibilities to do that.
On the city side, is that you or is it somebody else?
Well, it'll be me, but there'll be other folks as well that'll participate in that. But I think we're going to look to them to guide us.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is more a question for you, Mike, but there's a, everybody knows, on a proposal for a 50-unit apartment building that's pending or is being discussed anyway, and what percentage of total output does that represent?
yeah, I don't know if you're hearing that, Scott. I'm not hearing these questions very well. So I don't know if you can get close to the mic or.
Is my mic working?
Yeah,
I think the general question is about how real do we believe 1% growth is based on all of our current efforts to increase our housing stock. And so specifically, if we build a 50-unit apartment building this summer, what percentage did we just move the needle? It's really hard
Is the
to.
question whether we accounted for enough growth?
I think so, and it's not really answerable, so. I mean, we've been paying a lot of
It gets into
extra.
some crystal ball stuff, but I think we could do some sensitivity analysis on that, but generally looking at these numbers, even if we doubled the growth, it probably doesn't change the action as much because we're at most of this is rehab. Like we're not looking at expanded capacity. If anything, it'll make the numbers go up. But the tipping point is likely. Where we'd potentially tip into needing more would be something like a third clarifier that could also be dealt with if needed.
Okay, that answers my question, thanks.
You're also, you're running into the limit on volume of liquid, not necessarily ability to deal with the biological processes, right?
Right. Yeah,
So most of our volume of liquid, the way that we can deal with that is by just fixing leaks in pipes. We've got I&I is still a fairly significant percentage of what ends up in the plant. So we can deal with the volume number outside of the building, and the improvements that they're talking about making, I think, even if we're not changing the capacity volume-wise, are going to make the plant so much more effective at dealing with the biologic stuff that should be able to handle a lot.
Absorb it.
Are you guys hearing the audio on our end better?
Yeah, yep, I'm hearing everything now, so, yep.
Yeah, so the way I would characterize it, we tried to simplify the slides, but like when we design this, we'll look at average flows, max month flows, and we really look at max month because that's a permit compliance period, it's a 1 month. And then we'll look at the peak day for some parameters and the peak hours. So that the actual design's a lot more complex. The main one that we look at that drives more of the design than anything is the max month. And you've actually got quite a bit of room on the max month, flow wise. So, and that's why even if you had a lot more significant growth, I wouldn't be too concerned. That was absolutely correct that dealing with I&I would be the way to get some back if needed.
I have a question on the savings. You talked at various points about O&M savings, energy savings. Is there, it wouldn't, I don't think it would make sense to ask you guys to do a whole bunch of extra work, but is there a fairly simple way of estimating some of that? I think it would be helpful to be able to say, well, we're going to do this $8 million worth of work, but over a period of 20 years, it's going to save $1 million in energy. I don't know what the number would be, but it would be helpful to have some sense of that and then reduce O&M costs by so much. It would be sort of nice to be able to, I don't know, to advertise that, I guess, and represent that to the community as well.
Yeah, so you're talking like payback period analysis?
A little bit, yeah, something like that.
Not necessarily just payback, but other benefits that we will experience over the course of paying for it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone expects it to pay for itself.
Yeah, the energy efficiency improvements that are discussed in here are unlikely to pay for the capital cost over the.
As you get further in the design though, Scott and Mike, you'll be able to give us an estimate of like electricity percentage savings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even with certain funding, like if we want to go after the green project grant, we kind of have to show that. So yeah, we do have to try to show that, yeah. So I mean, all these motors will be new high efficiency motors. That the biggest thing is probably the aeration equipment. I mean, those are the biggest motors, and being able to, we'll have to frame that in a way, be interesting. But yes, we will have to kind of go through that if we want to pursue some of this grant funding.
And I assume the standby generator size is tied to the final design? Rather than just replacing it automatically with another 150 kilowatt unit?
Yeah, so I think the current size is 150 kilowatt. I think, we'll have to kind of, you can get kind of creative, I guess, with how big that generator needs to be. Like, there's not a whole lot of large, honestly, motors on site there, but if you could do kind of a phased or like a priority of what are the most important motors, and I'm assuming that 150 kilowatt generator was sized just to run everything.
Yeah.
Because there's no sort of control to do anything else. So we haven't looked into like what exact size it's going to be. We really just included the cost of a new generator, around the size you currently have. But we would go through that process as far as how large it needs to be during the detailed design.
Yeah, and with that more sophisticated control system, it lets us dial in that generator a lot better, because we can put in the programming to really tell it what can run when you're on emergency power.
All right, I'll stop asking questions about how you do your job.
Well, this is.
They're good questions, so I appreciate it.
Here. You're doing
Yeah.
the jobs too.
I have a question. Other cities that are in positions like we are with, 25, 30-year-old systems, I know we're kind of unique because we're right here on Lake Superior, where we're treating and dumping directly into Lake Superior. I don't know how many places do that, other than maybe there's some places in Wisconsin, Michigan, Two Harbors, Silver Bay. But there's not a lot of them compared to, the whole country. But other cities have had to upgrade and redo things that we're looking at doing. Do you have experiences with other places that you've done this to?
Yeah, I mean, I work on.
Have done this for, like, and then what are the results? What, I guess, if we're talking about energy savings and all these other things, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel, really. We're just kind of, we're another city on the list,
Right.
So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways you can answer that. I mean, I've been through a couple of projects like this where it's almost, you have to rehab almost the whole facility, or it's almost a whole new plant.
Yeah.
I would say, like, from a financial perspective, I've seen where they've somewhat bit the bullet and actually just increased, had some grant funding, like green project funding, that has covered some of the costs, but have actually financed a lot of it through SRF, and really just, had to increase rates. It's not ideal, but increase rates, $30-$40. But that kind of comes with, you let a plant, kind of age, get to this point, and then all of a sudden you're met with having to do all these improvements. So I would say, there's possibility, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question that you wanted, but from a financial standpoint, there's a lot of funding out there in grants that we can try to chase to really chip away at this overall cost.
Yeah.
But there is, I would expect, some rates to go up a little bit. Maybe not huge. We haven't really looked at that at all yet. But yeah, there's a lot of facilities around Minnesota that are kind of facing kind of the similar situation where plant built in 70s or 80s, and just a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the equipment is outdated and needs to be replaced. And trying to find the best way to navigate that, and whether it's a phased approach or doing it all at once, it's kind of give or take either way. So.
Okay.
Yeah, just for some context on that, I just went and pulled up the 2023 project priority list, which we're talking about submitting this to get on the 2024 list. But the 2023 list has 276 projects on it, of which I didn't categorize them, but they're probably roughly half collection, half treatment facilities. So, but even if you cut that in half, I mean, it's over 100 projects that in Minnesota that are looking at something similar. And everyone is unique. Sometimes, like this one is mostly rehab. Sometimes you'll have rehab plus capacity expansion because it's a growing community. Oftentimes it's new regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, the main three reasons to do a project are facility renewal, capacity expansion, and regulatory. And any one of those is enough to drive the need, but you start to add two or maybe even all three of them together, and it really pushes it.
Thank you.
I realize it's not part of your current report, but I'm curious about if there is some, if you were to do it, could there be some recommendations for ongoing, okay, so we do all these facility improvements and upgrades and rehab, but what should we be doing, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 8 years from now? So like a ongoing schedule of improvements and maintenance items. Maybe that's already in place, but it seems like it's sort of nice if you don't have to swallow this huge lump all at once, and maybe if we were doing it all the way along the line, we wouldn't have to. I don't know. At some point, you probably do face some big costs. But I'm just wondering, is that something you guys do? Or you think about that kind of thing? Is like, what should we be doing on an ongoing basis to minimize the need for a major plant overhaul 20 years from now?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're describing an asset management plan, and we actually do have a whole nother group that does asset management plans, and it's really, they cut across, like whether you're doing drinking water or wastewater, like the asset management principles are very similar. So yeah, we have a group that works more directly with that asset management aspect. Implementing an asset management plan, developing the plan and then implementing it concurrently with facility renewal, in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense. You're essentially hitting the reset button, and now it's let's do this better this time around. Yeah. And that generally the industry, the water wastewater industry has gone more to that. I think it's always been something we knew we probably needed to do, but just in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been growing recognition of the importance of that. So it's a long way to say yes. I would definitely encourage that. Is it a must do? Not necessarily, but it is best practice.
And it's been 35 years since this was reconstructed.
Yeah.
Is that when we built it, 35 years?
That's the last time a major work was done.
I remember that because my dad was busting rods on it. I remember going over there when he was working on it, so.
Yeah. So, and
I was curious,
that,
35 years ago.
Before that, it was not even 35 years before that, between major projects on it. In those 35 years, we've replaced a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've
stuff wears out.
repaired a lot of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not like we just
It's
are going to
maintenance.
spend this money and then wait for another 30 years
Right.
and do some more.
Right. I mean, eventually things at a bigger level wear out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's easy to replace a motor, or it's easy to replace this or that item or this item. But now we have a lot of new technology too, you know,
There's really a lot.
the
yeah.
controls and those types of things that we didn't have access to back then. Nobody did.
And that's when you look at this list and think, we're not really changing the character of the plant in terms of its capacities, but the way it does it is going to be modernized so much. It'd be hard to say which of these we don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
And for me, the idea of it being modernized means it's easier for our staff to operate. It's cleaner for our staff to operate. It's more energy efficient, and I mean, we didn't have those options on the table when we did this in the late '80s. They did the best that they could then, and really had, and even came back 10 years later and added some more new technologies after that with the UV system.
The UV system.
We've been looking at our pre-treatment stuff for a while, thinking it needs to be redone. But it doesn't make sense for us to necessarily do it without thinking out the whole program. And now we've got the whole program, and we can see how feasible it is for us to tackle it all at once. And if it's not, then we have to start thinking about, all right,
Mhm.
what comes first?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and,
I mean, just the way I think about it, if you think about, you know, earlier in the meeting, you were talking about getting a new pickup. If you compare a pickup from 1988 to a pickup that you would get in 2023, you know, there are some parts that are very, very similar, but there are some part, like a lot of it, there are a lot of differences as well. And it's not exactly analogous, but there's a lot of similarities in how things have changed. I mean, there's still an engine, there's still a transmission, but there's a lot more controls around a modern facility, and they're also more efficient. But there are also things that wear out. There's not many pickups from 1988 rolling around anymore.
right.
I like that it can call Neil at home at any hour.
He doesn't even have to be at home.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
just have to have this turned on.
Yeah. Good job, thank you.
Okay.
Well, now, Neil, you'd be able to run the plant from your boat. You'd just have your
Yeah,
app
exactly.
right up there.
I don't know if I'll fish those lakes that have internet access.
Well, you just have to pick the right ones.
Yeah, they're working on it.
Ski is done.
Yeah, by the time it's done, you will. Do we need a resolution for them to submit this to the MPCA? The preliminary plan?
Do you need them to make a motion right now?
No,
Yeah, I think it'd be good just so we're clear that we can submit this to the NPCA.
It's okay with me.
Second.
I don't think
We
we
have
need a
a-
resolution.
Hmm?
They're just looking for general agreement, not a
Yeah.
resolution.
Oh, okay.
But a motion and a second and a vote's a really clear way to do that.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, so we have
I'll move that we approve that they submit this preliminary plan to the, as amended to the MPCA.
And we have a second by Charles. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
There you go.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
So we get the.
thank you. Look forward to working with you as we go through this journey.
Journey.
It's gonna be a journey, that's for sure.
I still
It's
want
gonna be
to
a
get the
long
tour.
process to
I want to
treat
get the
this
tour,
one,
Neil,
I guess.
before the
For sure.
work starts.
You want it before and after.
Yeah, and during.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, for sure. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, now as you go through the tour, you can just bring this report with you and have a little more
Yeah,
context.
yeah, no.
When is our
I mean, I
tour?
learned a lot about wastewater treatment.
Whenever you want,
Just
Yeah.
today,
hook it up with the boss man there.
Schedule it.
yeah.
Next week,
Sure.
anytime of a day is good.
Yeah, I'll be one man down most of next week, so
So wait when
we
you're
won't,
not.
we won't take on any big projects.
I'm gonna wait till
One-
spring.
Yeah.
Warm.
One feller is going to Minnesota Rural Water School, training for 2.5 days.
So,
I'll
well-
move adjournment.
Motion made to adjourn the meeting today. Have a second?
All right,
Charles seconds it.
yes?
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for